I'm Governor Jan Brewer. I'd like to talk with you today about an epidemic that affects all of us. Domestic violence is a very serious problem here in Arizona and nationwide. 1 out of every 4 women will suffer abuse at the hands of a loved one at some point in their lives. A local survey found that 40% of people knew someone who had suffered domestic violence. These victims are our neighbors, our family members, our friends and co-workers, and sometimes even ourselves. Whether assisting at a scene following an incident or supporting victims through the court process, advocates give domestic violence victims the help that they need to find safety. Domestic violence leaves a damaging personal toll in our communities, but it is also a burden on our city and state resources. That's because these calls are among the most dangerous and expensive for law enforcement to handle. With the use of victim advocates, we can make sure our law enforcement officers have the help that they need. That keeps more victims safe and holds more abusers accountable. In this video, you will hear from one victim who found the courage to change her life with the help of victim advocates. We will show you how she was helped and how you can help others find similar resources. Thank you.
In Maricopa County, between 18 and 26 million is spent each year on justice system costs alone. By watching this video, law enforcement will see how working with victim advocates can assist them in their handling of domestic violence calls while connecting victims with the services they need. Law enforcement agencies working with victim advocates have reported decreases in the repeat calls for service to the same households. Reducing repeat calls for service means saving lives and saving money.
We know domestic violence affects every city in our region.
He was controlling, manipulative, unable to live my life as I wanted to live it. I was under constant threat.
It affects every neighborhood, every socioeconomic group, no matter your nationality, no matter where you come from.
Domestic violence can't be ended by one group or one person. It takes all of us working together.
I've had a knife to my throat. I've had a gun to my head.
We all need to be part of the safety net that ends domestic violence.
The key to delivering justice is having the victim actively involved. And the key to having the victim involved is having a quick and efficient justice system and trial.
We have joined forces to better support victim advocates and the critical work that they do.
It took strength. It took courage, but I couldn't have done it without my court advocate.
The bottom line is, unless we get our hearts and minds around this issue and our resources around this issue, we can't achieve our goals as a city of Phoenix, our goals as a region.
Terry was excited about starting a new chapter in her life.
My children had all moved out of the house, and I was on my own for the first time in my entire life, and I went on a date.
Terry's online date seemed like a great idea.
I met someone that presented himself differently than what he evolved into. It became more and more clear to me that this was not a normal relationship.
It didn't happen overnight, but love and devotion would soon turn to control and abuse.
First, it began with verbal threats and things in the relationship to make me feel as though I deserved the treatment. It was isolating from family members. Nobody knew what I was going through.
Addressing, preventing, and eradicating domestic violence is the goal of the Maricopa Association of Governments Regional Domestic Violence Council. The council is a multidisciplinary group that addresses issues related to domestic violence and provides a forum for communication and coordinated action. One of the council's most recent efforts has been focused on putting more offenders behind bars by adopting a new list of recommended police practices or protocols for dealing with misdemeanor domestic violence crimes.
Law enforcement agencies from across the state are reporting use of the first misdemeanor domestic violence protocol model. Use of this model means not only saving money, but most importantly, lives.
The project keeps everyone on the same page and the lines of communication open. It works across disciplines to hold abusers accountable and victims safe.
Really, the whole goal is to help you all feel more confident, so when you're out there responding to these types of calls.
A key component in the MAG Protocol Evaluation Project is the Victim Advocate. Dana Martinez is a victim advocate at A New Leaf. It's a nonprofit agency that provides refuge for domestic violence victims through its shelters and services.
Up until late to mid-90s, victims didn't even have rights.
Dana works with women like Terry, helping them to rebuild and restore their lives. Her advice for victims?
You deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. You don't deserve to be abused. You have the right to have a safe, healthy relationship. And it's important that you understand that you have value and you have worth, and you can do this on your own. And there are people and resources and services out there to help you.
The advocate or the crisis worker for us is there to represent that victim, to meet the victim's needs as they express them, to answer questions for the victim, to hold their hand if that's what the need is.
This is the Glendale Crisis Response Team. It's made up of volunteers trained by Glendale's fire department.
The role of the crisis response team on the crime scene is to provide support for the victims, families, and witnesses, along with the police department and the fire department. We want to make sure that everybody has a safety plan and that everybody is taken care of on scene.
Team members have backgrounds in areas such as behavioral health, emergency medicine, crisis intervention, and victim assistance. Arizona law requires law enforcement officers to provide information to victims about shelter and services.
What they're going through it may be horrible, it may be the worst day of their lives, but there are people that care about them, and that there are people that are going to help them get through their situation, and that's what we're there for.
Advocates have a critical role in assisting victims navigate through the court system. Sometimes the court system can be very complex and even a little challenging. And so to have an advocate there to really help them navigate through that system, to understand the complexities and the intricacies of the court's processes and filing for a protective order is really beneficial.
Protective orders against the abuser can assist in the safety of victims. Victim advocates are critical in providing guidance in how to get protective orders.
Typically, we see that 60 to 70% of protective orders are granted throughout the various courts. However, when they're working with our advocates, we see that increase to 85 to 90%.
Victim advocates provide valuable information that helps keep victims safe.
And we feel that that's a result of the fact that the victims have a better understanding of the process for filing for the protective order. And this is a benefit and an impact on the victims, and that it helps them feel safer and really helps them feel empowered.
Victim advocates are vital to linking various agencies while keeping the wheels of justice turning. What do the El Mirage advocates do? Make referrals for counseling, shelter, food, and support services.
This is the paperwork that you fill out.
Assist with obtaining orders of protection. Explain the judicial system. Act as a link between prosecutors and victims, and escort victims to court.
The benefit from the victim standpoint is now they have a positive contact with the police department to be able to help them make decisions, to walk them through the process, and to be able to have a sounding board if they have questions about how they're going to deal with these life-changing events.
The El Mirage Police Department is a big believer in victim advocates. The department works closely with advocates on staff as well as volunteers to forge good relationships with residents.
We've seen a level of trust between our community and our law enforcement increase. We've also been able to provide a level of service that we've never had before. Seeing violators of domestic violence being brought to justice, and to be able to see victims empowered, to be able to make those strong decisions, having the advocate walking them through the process has made some tremendous changes, and we've received several thanks of appreciation.
So apart from the authenticity of whether those photos were actually...
John Bellotti is a prosecutor.
The victim advocate is actually the liaison between the victim and the prosecutor on a case. In Chandler Municipal Court, we handle roughly 10,000 misdemeanor cases each year. A good number of those are domestic violence cases.
A prosecutor could have as many as 5 or 6 cases to work on per day, and free legal services are limited.
When did you first talk to the victim about restitution in the case?
That means many victims are unable to get the individualized legal assistance they need. A victim advocate, on the other hand, can
inform them of what's going on, inform them of the legal process, explain to them what an arraignment is, what a pretrial conference is, explain what's going to happen at those conferences, explain that continuances are a matter of fact, a matter of course in these cases. Explain to a victim what will happen if the case goes to trial, who will be in the courtroom, who will be watching her, who is going to be asking her questions. With that type of communication, if a victim is informed and knows the process, then we're much more likely to get a successful prosecution.
As a prosecutor, I've seen firsthand the difference that a victim advocate can make. by being there to answer a victim's questions, to be somebody they can turn to at any time for support, can make a real difference in a case. The difference between conviction and no prosecution at all.
Everybody deserves to be safe.
Besides helping to put the victim at ease, victim advocates help ensure those who abuse are held accountable. Accountability has proven to be effective in preventing future abuse.
Nobody knew what I was going through. Over time, it then evolved into physical harm. I've had a knife to my throat. I've had a gun to my head. I've been drugged. I've been threatened. My life, as well as those near and dear to me. His favorite was to recount to me how he was going to kill me and how he was going to get away with it. He was going to cut me into tiny pieces and then scatter my body.
Terry was caught in a vicious cycle. She didn't think anyone could help her, and she was afraid of what might happen if she tried.
So as those things get planted in your brain and your mind, you have a level of fear that prevents you from reporting those crimes to law enforcement because you're afraid of retaliation, not just for yourself, but for the people you love.
Then Terry found help.
After 4 years and some counseling, I was finally able to develop an escape plan. I worked with local authorities as well as my therapist. It was excruciatingly fearful during that time because I was so afraid that he would find out what I was planning and what I was doing to make it happen.
Working with police and victim advocates in the state she lived in at the time, Terry felt safe enough to take positive steps toward freedom. Terry was strong, but she couldn't have done it alone.
I was put in touch with a crime victim advocate. She was there to hold my hand, listen to my story, help me through my interviews with the police, telling my story.
With assistance from family, friends, police, and various agencies, Terry was able to leave the state, escape the abuse, and find a new home in Arizona, as well as a new job and a new beginning. Unfortunately for Terry, her abuser was not finished with his campaign of terror.
He found me at my employer. He hacked into their payroll system. He was able to find out identifying information. He represented himself as me on the internet using my social security number and date of birth to get more information about me. And then he used that information to set up false profiles on adult websites.
On those websites, he posted pornographic pictures of women who appeared to be Terry, along with her address and cell phone number. He would send pictures to her at work and to her coworkers. This happened over and over again as Terry was victimized repeatedly by her abuser. Thankfully for Terry, she was about to be helped again by a new victim advocate.
My first experience with an advocate here in Arizona was a court advocate. When I went to file for an order of protection, I was scared to death by myself. And I happened to wander into the office while she was there. She took me by the hand, she listened to my story, and within 15 minutes, she had helped me prepare my documents, had me in front of a judge, sat with me, and had my order of protection taken care of and granted. Something I couldn't have done by myself. I was too frightened. I was afraid. But she helped me do that. And from there, it just snowballed. Their involvement, getting the order of protection served, having me prepared on my end, because my abuser would certainly violate that order of protection immediately, which he did.
Maribel Gloria runs the Decolores shelter for Chicanos por la Causa. Many victims seek protection here.
Decolores has about more than 25 years providing services to victims of domestic violence.
Victim advocates provide a vital service for these survivors and their families.
It's very important that the worker get that trust, develops that trusting relationship with her. For these women, sometimes it's very, very hard to open up because of different life experiences. Fear being one of them, not getting the assistance that they need. Sometimes they have asked for help in other places and they haven't received the help that they need. And so that trusting relationship is very important.
Community advocates play a critical role. They have relationships with law enforcement. They can sort of assist victims through the process.
We brought together a cross-disciplinary group that served victims in all different capacities, from police officers to courts to victim advocates to shelters, and we surveyed them to find out what were the greatest needs of victims. And the greatest needs for victims were legal representation and victim advocacy, which are a lot of times tied together.
Justice O'Connor's vision for the O'Connor House was to bring people together to create solutions for the problems of the day. The first issue the Justice wanted to address was domestic violence. So with the help of the Avon Foundation, she founded the Program for Women and Justice. MAG, in partnership with the O'Connor House, created resources that help victim advocates in their work. This included asking advocates what tools they need to help more victims. One tool is a provider inventory that catalogs how people can obtain services from an advocate.
The interactive map is a unique tool that we've created in Arizona to help victims find services in their geographic area.
This statewide map is the latest in technology. It allows the victim advocate or the victim to find services close to a specific location.
This technology has never been used in the country before, and we are pioneering something that we're going to make available nationally.
I created this map as a resource for victim advocates. Navigate the map by dragging it back and forth. Click a point on the map for more information, including services available and contact information. Enter an address or zip code and click Locate, and you will zoom into that location and find services nearest to you. Refresh the map to bring it back to its original position. Click the Spanish button, and you'll be brought to a Spanish version of the website.
Victim advocates are important to O'Connor House because they're important to victims. Right now, only 1 in 4 victims that seeks help to go to court can get it. There are not enough lawyers, there are not enough resources.
It's one-stop shopping. At the Phoenix Family Advocacy Center, you will find several domestic violence service providers, all under one roof.
By co-locating officers and victim advocates, we do the best job we can for victims, domestic violence victims, during a time that things are really in upheaval in their life. So rather than just focus on the investigation, which is critical to holding the perpetrators accountable, we also want to look at the overall well-being of the victim and children often, because children come to centers too. So by co-locating, it allows detectives to do the very best job they can investigating, while we also provide the support to the victims that they need.
The Phoenix Family Advocacy Center is one of several nonprofit agencies providing hope.
They need emotional support, safety planning. We do danger assessments with them. We make sure they're connected to resources, housing, food, transportation. So we're asking them to get involved in the prosecution process, but we're giving them the tools they need in order to be able to stay the distance and stick with the investigation and stick with the prosecution.
They'll have that contact with law enforcement as well as other outside partners that come in, mental health providers, shelters, things of that nature. And it's someplace where a victim can feel comfortable and they don't have to make back and forth trips to different places to be able to get the services they need to move on.
Victims have suffered enough at the hands of their abusers. They need the system to respond quickly and effectively.
Advocacy centers are really based on two premises. One is that we do not re-victimize a victim in the prosecution of a case, and the second is that we have more successful prosecution of cases. So that underlies everything that we do.
The Family Advocacy Center works closely with the Phoenix Police Department and partners with many community agencies. They provide crisis counseling, long-term case management, and victim support groups.
Every day we see the Family Advocacy Center and our victim advocates impacting families in a positive way. It's unbelievable the work that they do in providing those victims with the steps they need to continue with their lives and maybe start over their lives.
It took strength. It took courage, but I couldn't have done it without my court advocate.
Terry's abuser tormented her for 6 years. It cost her several jobs, trust in relationships, and her stability. Eventually, she found safety and trust again by leaning on her advocates for support.
Many things I didn't understand, and I was certainly not in the right frame of mind to understand a lot of what was happening around me. And over time, I realized I needed to trust this person. Trust is a difficult thing when you're leaving an abusive relationship. I was able to establish trust with this person because they were there to comfort me, to explain things I didn't understand, to do things for me I wasn't capable of doing, but still keep me at an arm's length and work with me so that I could develop strength to advocate for myself.
And so the importance of having advocates is critical when we realize how pervasive and how insidious this problem can be. And advocates are frequently behind the scenes helping survivors, helping them through the criminal justice system, helping support them, providing them resources. And we hear from survivors that without those advocates, many of them would not have gotten the help they needed, the support, and would not have been able to move on and live a life free of violence.
Some tips for advocates. Law enforcement on the scene of domestic violence calls may appear cold and callous. While collecting evidence and conducting interviews, officers want to have the appearance of neutrality. However, certain tactics officers will use may make them appear that they're taking sides. Victim advocates can assist law enforcement by communicating what they see with the officers. This communication shouldn't take place in front of victims.
The number one tip I would give advocates in supporting prosecution is communication. Communicate with the prosecutor the victim's fears, anxieties, worries, so that the prosecutor can help assuage some of those worries to the victim. Communicate with the prosecutor what the victim wants done on the case.
Domestic violence creates a major strain on their way of life, and the victim's advocate is able to provide education, comfort, and most of all, assistance to be able to find resources in this time of need.
By cooperating in the arrest and prosecution of a batterer, a victim helps not only themselves, but serves as an example to future victims that they can stop the cycle of violence, that we can end domestic violence in our community.
Some benefits of advocates. Advocates serve as a go-between, serving the interests of the victim and explaining why the police do what they do. In Apache Junction, we have crisis service volunteers who provide compassion and support to victims following a domestic violence incident. This support will assist the victims in deciding to go forward with the prosecution and aid them in their recovery.
So the reason I'm smiling is because I'm beginning to discover those things. And I'm blessed to be here today, to be alive, to be retelling my story to any ears that will listen.
We in law enforcement understand that advocates represent the needs of victims, and that's okay, but we're still partners. Law enforcement needs to view advocates as a partner, and advocates need to view law enforcement as their partners as well.
New resources and tools are available to help connect law enforcement, victim advocates, and victims. Officers are encouraged to utilize these resources to connect with advocates in their community. Please visit the MAG website for more information.